The great majority of people think that to be persuasive, you have to be a fast talker. No, to be persuasive, you have to be a good questioner. And then you use stories to reinforce. If you give a talk, if I give a talk to an audience, and I will give examples throughout the day, within 24 hours, everyone in the audience will have forgotten all of the facts and details, but they will remember the stories for 5 years, 10 years. Sometimes they'll remember stories that they heard 25 years ago.
Welcome, everybody, to the Brian Tracy Experience. I'm Dr. Christina Tracy Stein, and I'm here with my two brothers, David and Michael, and of course, the star of the show, Mr. Brian Tracy. And today we are going to talk about the importance of storytelling life and relationships in business, in speaking, right? We do a lot of teaching around speaking and how it's important to use stories to share ideas and points so people understand. So, what I connect to when I think about storytelling is, Dad, when you and I are teaching the Speakers Academy, it's one of the keys that we teach people to be, impactful speakers is that when you make a point or you share a concept, that you want to help people see themselves doing what you're teaching them. Best ways to do that is telling a story of someone else who's done what you're trying to talk to them about. How did what are your thoughts about that, and how did you come up with that?
Many years ago, I put together a course on accelerated learning, rapid learning, how you can learn and memorize things and keep them forever. And I studied the human brain. We know is that the human brain has two parts, if you like, the emotional and the intellectual. The intellectual is activated by facts, data, numbers, things like that. These are all the things you learn in courses in school. The other part of the brain is the emotional brain, is the relationship brain. And and more in the last few years, they've come to this conclusion that the feelings that you have an enormous multiplier impact on the ideas. So what we talk about is the windshield wiper method, which is left brain is facts, data, details. Right brain is stories, emotions, and so on. Now, one of the things that everyone wants to be is to be more persuasive. In fact, your ability to be persuasive, to get people to cooperate with you, work with you, are not only the keys to your success in any work, but also in leadership. Leadership, that leaders have the ability to bring people along with them.
And then you're able to deliver a highly intellectual or analytical point in a very memorable story. And you've done that many times. Do you have like a favorite story or just one that pops into your mind at this moment?
Well, I have many. One of the things that I try to encourage people to think about is that they can do much better than they're doing today if they simply learn how. And so, one of the stories that I start off with, I say, "What is your most valuable asset? What your most valuable asset?" And I let them sit with it. Now, there's a very important point. The person who asks questions has control. The person who asks questions has control. The person answering the questions is controlled by the person asking the questions. So one of the keys to persuasion is to ask people questions. Ask them about themselves and their work, their progress and their opinions and their ideas, and nod and smile. When you nod and smile, it means that you're taking it in. You're taking it in. So be an active listener, and it's quite astonishing. People will tell you the most amazing things, interesting things, fascinating things, things that you hadn't even thought of. But if you ask, the great majority of people think that to be persuasive, you have to be a fast talker. No, to be persuasive, you have to be a good questioner. And then you use stories to reinforce. If you give a talk, if I give a talk to an audience, and I will give examples throughout the day, within 24 hours, everyone in the audience will have forgotten all of the facts and details, but they will remember the stories for 5 years, 10 years. Sometimes they'll remember stories that they heard 25 years ago.
I was going to say, can I just show something real quick from your book?
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. So at the very top of that is the globe. And that's where everyone starts out before they go on their hero's journey. And at that moment, you're kind of complacent and you don't want to change. And then you get what they call a call to adventure. Somebody comes up and says, hey, Michael, you should be a speaker. Or, hey, David, you should start a business. And you go, no, no, no. You refuse the call to adventure. You say, it's not for me. I'm not smart enough. I'm not strong enough. I don't have enough time. And then it usually takes the intervention of a mentor to come in and say, you know what, you are good enough, you are smart enough, you can do it. And then you finally take your first big step and you cross that threshold into the new world. And I won't go into the whole thing. You can always, what's cool about that process is if you've ever read a novel or watched a movie, and at the end of the movie or the novel, you have this feeling like, oh, that's it. It didn't like wrap it all up. It's because it's missing one core element. And to go back to what you do, Deb, with your windshield wiper method, is you take these points and then you give the audience a visual where they envision themselves in the story, overcoming the challenge and getting the benefit of overcoming that challenge. And it sticks. They walk away remembering that for a lifetime.
See, one of the rules that's with regard to stories is that people, unless there's an emotion attached to a thought, it won't be remembered. When you attach a story to someone who got pre and post, before they did this sort of thing, they got this result. As a result of doing this, they got that result. Which would you like, this or that? If you want that, this is what they did. And so when you tell stories, sometimes people will try it and it won't work, but they'll remember the story that somebody else tried it and it didn't work the first time or the second time or the third time. If you want to be successful in business, which we keep coming back to, is each person has a responsibility to fulfill their potential financially. You want to reach the point where you never worry about money again. And to be persuasive, there's nothing that persuades people to buy your product or service more than testimonials, or tell a story about a person who was reluctant and hesitant and finally decided to go ahead. And this is what happened to her. This is what this person said to me afterwards, after they overcame their reluctance to accept my offer, and then they started to use it. This is the story they told. People will remember the story and considering buying from you for the same reason.
I also think that sometimes people don't believe things are possible, right? You hear an idea or a concept, you get taught something, and it's hard to imagine yourself being able to apply that to your life. So when you hear from another person that they have tried it or they've gone through an experience, not only do you relate to that person who might be similar to you, right? And obviously, if I hear a story of a woman who has kids who does something, I'm going to relate more to her than a single man, so the more I connect to the character of the story, the more emotionally I relate to her, the more I'm going to believe it's possible for me. And I think that makes it more memorable, right? I think part of it, it's like that quote from Maya Angelou: people will forget what you did, people will forget what you said, but they will never forget the way you made them feel. So the stories, right? We want to tell stories that actually inspire or motivate people or give them, new hope in some way. Those are the feelings you're wanting to inspire.
In order to be successful, we have to motivate other people to help us. From the very beginning, business, your success only grows when you get an assistant who can take care of the little stuff so that you can spend more time doing higher priced, more valuable things. And since you want to be more persuasive, this is the key to your success. We said earlier that your most valuable single asset is your earning ability. It's your ability to earn money. And not only that, it's the ability to earn more and more and more. And I spun around in circles for years in my early 20s. And I worked on farms and I worked on ships and I worked at sleeping on the hay in the farmer's barn during the harvest. I finally started asking myself, why is it that some people are more successful than others? I eventually couldn't find any of the jobs except selling from door to door. So I started doing that, and I did a terrible job of it. Learned how. So the bottom line for success in any field is study the craft. Resolve to become better and better. Read an hour every day. Try practice the new things that you learn. And then when you become a speaker, if you do, or even if you just influence people as individuals, you say, this is what happened to me. When I started off, I was here, and this is what happened to me when I learn and apply these new ideas.
So in marketing, you create avatars. You go, what sort of people buy my products, and then what stories do I need to create for each one of these people, so that they feel connected to my brand, and then that gets you over that initial hurdle of influencing and persuading them to buy your product.
Here's another point with regard to persuasion, and that is that people are persuaded when you appeal to their emotions. There's a point I was going to make there. The veracity or the truth of what you say is only demonstrated by the successes that other people have had. And all of science, of course, is based on infinitesimal fractions of changes or improvements that you can make. But it's all provable. So when you tell a story, basically that's proof that this other person can enjoy the same results and benefits that someone else did. And so the most successful companies are constantly success stories. Oh, one last point, that's what I was going to say, is the great key to influencing other people is to make other people feel important. Now, this is what Dale Carnegie said in his wonderful book, Make Others Feel Important. How do you make others feel important? You ask them questions and listen intently to the answers. Many speakers that I've seen, they will ask a question rhetorically and then they just go on talking. So they don't even listen to the other person's feedback. But when you ask a person a question and lean and listen closely to their answer, they feel more important. They feel more valuable. And as a result, they like you more. They're more willing to be involved with from you and to be associated with you, and even especially to hire you. I used to do courses on how to hire, how to fire, books all over the world in 50 languages. And one of them, and how to hire and how to fire, is to ask a lot of questions. And if you don't feel good about that person, just continue.
What if, we have a lot of listeners right now on lots of different platforms. And so if you were to think about what dream would you dare to dream if you knew you would not fail? So liberating to consider a guaranteed win, and maybe that's a better question for you guys that are listening is, what is one dream you would dare to dream if you knew you would not fail? One thing you could just have or be or do in your life and it was guaranteed.
You do kind of want to have to reflect and think about, what is your own story? What is your background? What are the composition of experiences that make you you? And to be able to communicate that efficiently to somebody really helps them get to know you better.
I read a wonderful description of success, which I really like it. It says, is that all great successes are preceded by failure, 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 and then great success. One of the things that I've learned is that there's a certain number of lessons that you must learn in order to achieve a goal, let's say a financial or business goal. There's a certain amount of lessons you must learn, and you can only learn the lessons by failing and picking yourself up and saying, what did I learn from this experience? And you never know how many lessons you are away from the breakthrough. And this is really important. You just must confidently believe that if you keep pushing forward, you will find an opportunity. You will find an opportunity to do this or do that or do something else. Most of what you try will not work the first time. Sometimes it won't work for the first few times. That's why most new businesses go broke very quickly, because that person has no experience with failure and finances and sales and marketing and staff. And really important that you learn from every mistake. And the way you persuade people is ask them questions and listen intently to the answers.
And what about a Brian Tracy autobiography? That would be an interesting story. Is that people don't trust people who are not don't show some sign of imperfection or vulnerability, right? If you are perfect and you achieve everything perfectly, it's not believable. You can't trust it. You don't connect to it. So, because nobody is perfect. So, even the adversity of a story of like, overcoming a challenge shows that it's not perfect. And then it becomes more real and believable.
On the topic of stress, when it comes to maybe feeling like you're on the wrong path, when you're failing over and over again before you finally succeed, you can feel a tremendous amount of stress in that situation too. How do you teach your audience and your clients the difference between identifying whether you're on the wrong path or whether you're just feeling the natural stresses of all the failures before you succeed? Because a lot of people have a hard time with that.
If I was not now doing this, would I start doing it again today? If I was not now in this job, this profession, in this relationship, if I was not now living in this neighborhood, whatever it happens to be, listen to yourself and trust yourself. And the answers are all within you. But what you do is you recognize that every failure precedes success. So every time you have a setback, it's almost like there's a great power in the universe that's training you in order to be successful. And the only way that you will learn, you say, is if you get a whack in the head. If you don't get a whack in the head, you can keep talking to yourself and convincing yourself that you're doing all the right things. So be open to the fact, the possibility, I could be wrong. And what you just said, that's really important. If I was not now doing this way, would I start? If the answer is no, there's a wonderful Chinese poem or saying that says, the person who's on the wrong path and turns around and goes back is making more progress faster toward their goals than the person who keeps pushing on the road that's not working. So be open to that. Human beings, according to Darwin, tendency toward momentum, called the momentum theory of success, is once they get going, they just want to keep going in the same direction. And if you point out to them, you're on the wrong road.
But so, Dad, here's a question though to go along with what David was saying, right? Because you get out what you put in. So if you're going to achieve great success, you're going to have to put in a lot of time and effort and energy to achieve great things. And sometimes along that road of effort, you hit walls, you feel overwhelmed, you feel, you're stressed out and it doesn't feel good and you're not happy with the situation. So there are times where you're going to hit that moment or that wall and need to keep going because it's a natural part of your progress. Or you're going to hit that wall and realize that it's the wrong direction. How do you know the difference? How do you determine if it's just you've got to have the grit and you've got to work hard and you just got to get through the obstacle or the challenge, or hey, this is the wrong road, I need to turn around?
Well, again, you have to trust yourself. David's wife, Paula, attended this 3-day SOM course a few months ago, and she told us that after 3 days of working with these very talented people, the conclusion, I said, what did you learn? She said, trust yourself, listen to yourself, and sit quietly. It's one of the greatest discoveries of human history is that if you sit quietly for 30 minutes, not 25, it has to be 26 minutes, 27, but you sit quietly for 30 minutes on your porch or somewhere else, is that your mind will start to clear like clouds dissipating, and you'll start to get ideas and answers to all your biggest problems. There was a statement by one of the great French writers. He said that most people have never sat alone with themselves in a room for their entire lives, quietly by themselves, and just thought. So sometimes there's a saying that says, to go faster, go slower. To go faster, go slower. And just allow the silence. It's called going into the silence. You go into the silence and sit quietly.
Slow is smooth and smooth is fast. Sometimes to go faster, you have to slow down because you're rushed through things.
There is one thing that's interesting about achieving a goal that you set for yourself, because when you do get to that place, you're no longer the same person. So this ties back to this whole idea is like, is there a destination? Is there a moment where you can say, okay, I'm all done. I've achieved all my goals. I'm finished now. I can relax. Is that moment ever really going to come for anyone?
Well, that's not true. Probably 80% of people have reached that point one way or another. But the fact is that your job throughout your life is just to become everything that you're capable of becoming. Now, that sounds hokey, but it's really true. And whatever you've accomplished up to now, what you can accomplish in the future is vastly greater.
One of the stories that just occurred to me is the story that ends with just one more at the place next door.
It's a story about a salesman. He's working harder in the business, but he's not making any sales, and he's frustrated. He doesn't have enough money, and he's thinking about quitting. He gets an appointment halfway across town, and he said, well, what I'll do is I'll call on this last appointment, and if it's not successful, I'll give up and try something different. So he drives all the way across town and goes in to see the store owner, and a large store, and he's talking to him about his products. And the store owner says, I don't think I'm in the market for your product or service right now, but thanks for coming. Keep in touch, which is what customers say. That keep in touch means goodbye forever. So he walks out and he said, that's it. He said, that's it. I've come all the way over town and didn't get a sale or an appointment of the lead to a sale. He said, the heck with it. And then he notices in this same shopping area, there's another big store. And he thought, well, I'm going to continue. I'm quitting, but I might as well call on this other store before I go back to the office. So he goes in, he asks for the owner, the manager. The owner and manager needs exactly what he's talking. He makes a big sale. Everybody's happy, high-fiving. From now on, I will always make I'll take one stop more on the store next door. And the philosophy of that means that you never quit. It never occurs to you to quit. You'll try something different. You'll go somewhere different. You'll do all kinds of things. The idea of quitting is impossible. It does not exist. The only question is, how can I do it differently and better next time? There's a lot of young people who just finished their schooling or their childhood, and they're getting their first job, and they're thinking about retiring. They're complaining about having to come to work every day, and they like to stay at work and work on their computer and phone their friends and so on. And they're saying, no, you have to come to work. If you don't come to work, you'll be fired. And they'll say, like little children, that's not fair. Well, I've got news for you. Life is not fair. Life is not fair. Your job is to be one of the most successful people in your world. And how you do that, it's like ratcheting up a car. It's got a flat tire. Is you learn something new and apply it. Learn and apply. Learn and practice. Nothing can stop you from getting better and better and better and getting more and more results.
Well, one of the things that you frequently said is, the harder I work, the luckier I get. Or maybe even like where you're working a lot in the beginning and you're not seeing a lot of results, and then only towards the end do you start to get the maximum benefit.
And most people don't succeed. Most people make most of their money in their 50s. If they spend years and years working their way up, learning more, and so on. And then they start to earn much more than they're spending, and they start to save that and to invest that and to put it away and grow it over time. And I met so many people who've come to this country from Russia or from Africa or South America or from Asia, and they come here with nothing, no money, no connections, sometimes no language skills. And after 5 years, a big success. They're doing great. I could tell you so many wonderful stories. The bottom line is there's really no limits except the limits you place on yourself. And when you say, I can do anything I put my mind to, it's just a matter of time. And so the greatest word of all is clarity, is exactly what do you want to accomplish in a week, a month, a year? How much do you want to earn? Where do you want to be in your field? What are the probabilities that something will happen in a certain way? And you can influence those probabilities. That's really exciting. So I'll say, for example, one of the stories I always tell, I say, before we begin, 1,000 people, I say, how many people here would like to double their income in the weeks and months ahead? And everybody stops. They all raise their hand. Everybody wants to double their income. So then I play with them a little bit and I say, well, that's good because I have a couple of methods to help you double your income, which I'll share with you over the course of the day. If there's a way to double your income, I want to hear it now. Well, so I say, well, there's a law called the law of probabilities, and you can calculate probabilities in several different ways. You have to use differential calculus. You have to have advanced instructor. I needed a tool, a tutor. Probability that everything will happen. I say, here's the deal. The average professional salesperson in this room will make 2 new calls on new prospects each day. Most important thing is if you ask a question, pause and wait the question, and even say to them out loud what the answer is. I say, what light do you stop on and what light do you go? People automatically answer the question. It's almost like a switchblade. They cannot not answer a simple question. So you can control. They say the person who asks questions has control. How do you mean exactly? That's an interesting point of view. How do you mean? Never argue or debate with people because that makes them feel unimportant. Always say that's a really great idea.
A lot of times when people ask a question, they already sort of know the answer. I mean, one of the things that you help me is when people ask a question, you sort of just rephrase the question back to them and get them thinking about their own question. And then
Yes.
60, 70% of the time, they have the answer already.
Yes.
They just needed an ear to reflect it back, or a mirror. Christina, you've dealt with a lot of that too, I'm sure.
Yes, but also I would say, since we're talking about authenticity and stories and connection, that people also know if you ask them a question that you don't actually want the answer to, right? Like, how many times do people say, how are you? Hi, how's it going? And they don't genuinely want to know. So I would say, don't ask questions that you don't actually want answers to, because
Sure.
people are smart enough to know when you're just...
Well, to come full circle to persuasive ability, there's nothing that persuades more than stories. Here to there is they did this, and you tell the story about how people went by changing their behavior to getting different, better, faster, easier results.
One thing you mentioned, Mike, too, is this whole concept of getting there, like getting to this point where you can sit back and say, it's complete. I made it. I'm successful. And it's completely illusory because there is no there. When you get there, there's always going to be another goalpost in the future. And
Yes.
if you can train your mind to accept that there will never be a there, then you can really start to sort of find satisfaction in the little wins. How many people listening say, I'll be happy when it's this goal in the future? And when you get to that goal, are you really happy and your life's complete, or is there just another thing that you need to keep doing?
But it's also probably not, it's not necessarily having something that gives you joy. It's the feeling of something that gives you joy, right?
Sure.
Going back to like the stories and connecting. So it's more about on a daily basis, like, how do you feel in your life? Do you feel happy? Do you feel connected to the people around you?
A lot of people feel that way about retirement too, right? I'll be so happy when I finally retire. And then when they finally retire, they lose their minds because they don't have something to occupy their time anymore. It's illusory. You have to get off of that, I think. It's really hard to get off of it, but when you do, you can really find happiness. How often do you go back and review those written goals, Dad? Is that something that you do every month, every day, every year?
Every day I sit and write my 10 most important goals. The impact of that over time is quite extraordinary. If you do not know what it is you want to accomplish, then you will just go around in circles. And 80% of people, remember the danger is great. 80% of people are not really making very much progress. They are in the lower number of people in terms of income. Your job is to be in the top 20%. People in the top 20% earn over time, according to Harvard, 10 times the average person earns. Your job is to say, I'm going to be in the top 10%. And then nothing can stop you. And this is something I do with my audiences. I say, there's nothing that can stop you from joining the top 10 or 20%, increasing your income automatically. Nothing, no one. There is one person who can stop you from being a big success in life. Who would that be? You've got 1,000 people, even 2,000, and everybody's quiet, and they all go like this. I'm the only one who can hold me back from accomplishing it. So that means if you don't hold yourself back, nobody else will. Because here's the tragedy: is people don't care that much about whether you're successful or not.
That's a beautiful point to wrap up this episode.
Yes.
That was a beautiful, very eloquent way of putting it, Dad.
The hustlers, like all the people watching this, these are the people who make things happen.
Fail faster to succeed sooner.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you.
Everybody,
Love you guys.
see you next time.